All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. We are recording this so that other folks can watch later, but I do appreciate those of you who are able to make it in person and get this conversation started. I am going to do a lot of talking. I apologize for that, but I do want you guys to talk too. So you are welcome to raise your hand physically, raise your hand using the button in Zoom, or just turn off your mic and say something, or put something in the chat. Any one of those things is fine. I'll keep an eye out for all of them, and I'll leave time for questions and comments between my talking at you. And it looks like Renee is going to provide us with some kitten entertainment, which is always welcome. Okay, so tonight we're talking about adoptions and CAT's adoption policies and why they exist and why it's really important to remove barriers to adoption, why we want everyone to be able to adopt. And one of the really important things that CAT does, and a lot of progressive shelters do, is an open adoption policy or a conversation-based approach to adoption. So rather than like someone coming in and filling out an application where they ask them like every little part of their life and where do you live and do you rent, do you own, you know, how many pets have you had and where are they all now, and just, you know, kind of interrogating them about every aspect of their life. It's more of a let's talk about what your situation is like and what might be the best fit for you and help you find a cat. So more of a friendly, approachable way to allow adopters to find a kitty that's good for them. So we're going to talk about a few things tonight. One is welcoming all adopters, regardless of, you know, who they are. So, you know, we don't discriminate against any folks on who are trying to adopt. So we do welcome everybody. One of the other things we're going to talk about is people who would just want to adopt one cat or kitten, and why we welcome those folks. Also, how our conversations with adopters go, and how we can reframe them or refocus them. And then when adoption restrictions are appropriate. So we'll talk through some situations where it does make sense to restrict an adoption for a kitty. So before we get into all that, I have a little fun quiz time. So if you don't have your video turned on, you can use the comment section, or you can use the little raise your hand in Zoom to tell me yes or no or whatever, however you want to do it. But I just kind of want to get an idea from you all on some of these questions. So how many of you have adopted a kitten from a shelter before? Okay, lots of raised hands here. All right, all right. Like most of you, if not all of you. How many of you have adopted a single kitten from a litter of kittens? Yeah, pretty much everybody that said yes. Yeah, all of you, right? So a lot of us have adopted a single kitten from a litter of kittens. Next question, how many of you had an indoor-outdoor cat growing up, or maybe still do? Yeah? No? Okay, just a few of us. I definitely had an indoor-outdoor cat growing up, and he got hit by a car, which happens, you know.
Mary, can you repeat the question? You broke up while you were asking it.
Sorry about that. My question was, how many of you had an indoor-outdoor cat growing up, or possibly still do?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And this one, I'm guilty of this one. How many of you have hidden a pet from your landlord, or not kept your pet up to date on its vaccines? A few of us, at least those that are willing to admit it, right? And then final question, how many of you started fostering for cat with all the cat and kitten knowledge that you have now? Like you came to cat and you knew everything and you didn't learn a thing? Nobody. Okay, that's what I expected. And you've learned a lot through cat, right? And through our systems about how to take care of cats and kittens, right? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so that was just kind of like a little icebreaker, get you involved, get you thinking about all this stuff, because a lot of those questions are gonna apply in this conversation we're gonna have. So, all right, so one of the first things we're gonna talk about is how we welcome all adopters, regardless of age or race or education or experience with cats or knowledge about cats or where they live or what their income is or any of that, right? So we want everyone to be able to adopt a kitten, right? Like who's deserving of adopting a kitten? Everyone is, right? Everyone deserves to have a kitten. We all have to agree on that, right? We all deserve to have a kitten. Kittens make us happy, cats make us happy. And I am talking about cats and kittens, although we do focus a lot on kittens in this conversation, but everybody deserves to have a pet and companionship, right? Regardless of what situation they're in. And I want to remind you guys that we all come from different backgrounds. So that was what that question was kind of getting me to think about. Like we all came from somewhere at some point, maybe not knowing a lot about cats, maybe not having a lot of experience with cats, but we learned along the way, right? So when I was a kid, I had a cat who was indoor outdoor. You know, I don't know that we did anything for him that we were supposed to do. Did we have a litter box? I don't think so. Like we just kind of fed him and let him do his thing. And we had a dog that just lived kind of like in the side yard. Like, and I look back on that and I just cringe, right? Like, oh gosh, these poor animals, like that's not how you're supposed to take care of them. But that's where I came from. And along my way of owning pets and being involved in this community, I've learned a lot of things. And you'd be surprised at how many people out there still in our community, you know, are working with that knowledge base that, well, dogs are outside only, and oh, cats, you just let them free roam, and that's just the knowledge they're working with. And part of our adoption program is getting them to the point where we can talk to them about this and explain why we adopt kittens to indoors only and why we provide all the litter boxes they need and all the entertainment they need to be happy and whatnot. So just wanted to get you thinking about that. And then also how we strive as an organization to be inclusive of everyone. So CAT now has a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. And so they meet and they talk about different ways that we can make CAT's, all of CAT's programs more inclusive for everybody. And that's really important when it comes to adoptions, right? We want to make sure that there's no biases involved. So that's where our first come, first served policy comes into place, right? So the first person to apply should be the first person that is allowed to adopt the kitten, assuming, you know, it turns out to be a good fit for them. We all have unconscious biases, right? I'm sure there's a lot of bias training going on right now in a lot of people's workplaces and communities, and we're all talking about it. We're talking about how we have these unconscious biases that we just don't even know. We don't even know we're doing it, but when we look for an adopter, we're looking for something that's similar to us, right? We're looking for, we think this is the perfect adopter. And I like to think of it as like, you might imagine like, oh, a white affluent homeowner with a good education who speaks English really well, has a history of owning indoor cats, a desire to adopt a pair, has a catio and all the knowledge in the world and is ready to go and wants your kittens, right? Great, that's my adopter, that's what I'm looking for. Does everyone kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't say all those things necessarily, but you have something in mind like that, right? Maybe something like that. Okay, I'm getting a little bit of nods there. How many adopters are out there like that? Not very many, right? how many kittens do we have to adopt out every year, and how many more do we want to help every year to make sure that they aren't euthanized in shelters, right? So we need to really relax our idea of what this perfect cat home is, and also understand that everyone's going to come with a different knowledge, and that we can get them to the point of being a good cat owner with our adoption counseling and education that we provide. Does anyone have any questions on that so far? I'm kind of running through it fast.
Hey, Mary.
Yes.
It's Patty. Not really a question, but yeah, I can definitely say that I started out very much feeling that way, that like, okay, I want somebody who wants 2 kittens or already has another cat. And you know, yeah, definitely had like the person in mind. But this last time with my group, I definitely had to do on the new system, you can't even look at all the other applications. You can only look at the first one. And at first I was so anxious about that, but it ended up being totally fine, like totally worked really well. And it kind of, I changed my expectations, and they ended up being really great people. Yeah, it ended up being really great. So I was super thankful for that. So I've changed.
Thank you for sharing that, Patty. That's really great feedback, and I appreciate that, because a part of the reason we're having this conversation is that it did change recently, right? Like, it used to be that you would get all these emails and you could, and a lot of people were saying to me that they were just picking through them for the one that looked the best to them, which they weren't supposed to be doing. And if you sign up to review your own applications, you know, there's still potential tendency to want to look through and pick out the one you like the best. And if you're doing it on your Instagram, like some folks have heavy Instagram followings, the same rules apply there. You're really supposed to be doing a first come, first serve and not picking out who you think is best.
I had a hard time with that. Not gonna lie. Because I think we used one of my litters as a test run for the new AutoPets thing. And yeah, I had my ideal vision for what I saw for the cat or for the kitten, and that's not where she ended up going. So I'll be completely honest, I had a hard time with that, but that's something I have to get over. That's my issue, not everybody else's issue. And she's fine, by the way. She got a great home.
I think if some of you were at the AddaPets training that we did, Renee brought this up, and it was actually really, really great, the story that she talked about. The exact same thing, that she had this perfect family in mind, and then that the person who was first in line didn't match that, but she knew the kitten would still be loved and have a wonderful life regardless. And even if that person wasn't, you know, didn't have all that knowledge up front, maybe, you know, they weren't sure about indoor outdoor, they didn't know about declawing and what it meant, or, you know, they weren't even really sure how to keep this kitten happy. Our adoption counseling program is actually very rigorous. Like, the people that are doing the adoption counseling sessions are talking about every aspect of kitten or cat ownership that you could imagine. So everything from how to set up a foster room, or sorry, how to set up your safe room, and how many litter boxes you need, what kind of litter, what are you going to feed them, how are you going to trim their nails, when do you need to take them to the vet, talking about like harness training or catios and playtime, and you know, how to make sure they sleep at night and that they're entertained. And so it's like a long, like they can spend up to an hour with the person just really talking to them, and they tailor it to the adopter too. So they tailor it for the cat and for the adopter. So if that adopter is totally new to cats, they can take a while to talk to them. Or if we've already adopted 6 cats from us, you know, they can do a quick express session for them. And if the cat is a particularly challenging behavior cat, they'll talk specifically about how to address those issues when you're first taking them home. So I think a lot of you might not even know that because you've never adopted a cat through us. So you might have never been through adoption counseling. And so, you know, all you're seeing on your end is that you do this meet and greet, and you know, you tell the person about the kitten, and then all of a sudden it's adopted, right? So you don't get to see that piece. And, you know, I want you to know that they really are getting a lot of really great information on how to properly care for cats.
Mary,
Yes.
I went through one of the adoption counseling sessions online just so I could see how the system worked and all the information that the adopters get. And it was really very, very enlightening. And I think it would be great if all of the fosters had the chance to do that.
That's a great idea, Susan, and I think we can definitely make that available. I think you all know that at some point in your process of fostering, you have the option to become an adoption counselor, but if you're just interested in seeing what adoption counseling is like, we can absolutely get you added on to like somebody's session already, or we could record one and have you guys have the ability to watch it. I think that's a really great idea, and thank you. Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, so I want to continue to talk a little bit about the single kitten adoption, because we all raised our hand that at one point we adopted a cat or a kitten on its own at one point in our lives, right? Yeah, time and time again on the Facebook group and all over, we see everybody really celebrating and pushing these double kitten adoptions, right? Like, oh, they're all going to stay together for the rest of their lives. They all got adopted in pairs, and we're all cheering, And it's great, I get it. It is great, but I also want you guys to see the other side of it. That a kitten getting adopted on its own is still a celebration, and it's still great, and that kitten's still going to be happy. And there's nothing wrong with recommending that your kittens go in pairs, but most of you know by now that we don't bond kittens, so we can't require that they get adopted together. All kittens in a litter love each other. They all have a favorite. They all snuggle with each other. It's adorable. We love it. We'd love to see them do it forever, but for one, it's not really fair to require it. It doesn't allow anyone to adopt those kittens because it's what, $380 to adopt 2 kittens, and then you gotta take care of them, take them to the vet, then they turn into old cats together, so they're seniors at the same time, and all those vet bills, that's really expensive, and we're not being fair to folks who are not of a higher income level to require that kittens go in pairs. So the financial constraints are one thing. The other thing is somebody might already have a cat at home, right? And they're looking for another kitty to be its friend, or a dog even. They have a dog that likes cats, and it's okay for them to go home and become friends with them. It's also okay for a cat to be an only cat. I have one right now, and he's fine. I guarantee you he's fine. I had him since he was a kitten, and yeah, we've had another cat here and there, but he's got a catio, he's got playtime, he's got a couple dogs. He's okay. So what I'm getting at is that it's okay to celebrate the double adoptions, and it's okay to recommend it, and it's okay to recommend that they have another cat friend, but they can be happy on their own. They really can. It's we really anthropomorphize the situation in the sense that we think of them as human families. So we want to keep siblings together, right? That's not how it works in the cat world. If they were out in the wild and it's mom and a litter of kittens, by the time they're all weaned, they're all going off their separate ways. They're solo hunters. The only reason they hang out in groups is because we're providing them with endless amounts of food, and so they're all hanging out together. They can be perfectly happy on their own. Does anyone want to talk more about that? I know it's a sensitive one.
Yeah, here I am again. It's Patty. Not my last group, but the group before that, I had a really hard time adopting them out. I had a couple different people cancel at the last minute with 2 different pairs of kittens. Very hard. And I ended up having one cat that I was really hoping would go with the group with another one, or in a home with another cat. And he didn't. He went to a woman who I'm actually friends with, the sister, and so she has cat sat this cat. He's now probably 5 months old, and so I get to go over and see him when she's cat sitting him, and they bring him over with no toys, and he sleeps in their bathroom, and so it's like all the things that like, oh, this is what I was kind of worried about. But he himself seems perfectly happy and content. And so I keep on telling myself, like, he doesn't know any different. He doesn't know any, and also like you said, like people change as pet owners. They might realize like, oh, this kitty could use a friend, or this kitty may grow out of his kitten phase and be fine being solo. So I kind of like, yeah, like you said, I'm trying not to anthropomorphize and look at him and he seems happy. It's more me projecting my feelings than what the cat's actually feeling, I think. So yeah.
Thanks, Patty.
Mhm.
That's good to have. And I think that if your adoption counselor knows they're adopting to a single kitten home with no other pets, like they're going to talk to that person about how can you entertain that kitten? 'Cause, yeah, they need to be entertained. Like they're little monsters when they're young, right? Like they need extra playtime, or if they're going to home with children, like they can become best buddies with the children and run around the house together. Like that's probably the best situation for them. So yeah, it really is. Yeah, like these cats can be happy. And again, going back to the whole like, hey, there's lots of kittens that need homes, and we really shouldn't be turning too many people away because we want to help more of them, right? Like we want to get people to adopt rather than go out and buy a cat somewhere from a breeder. We want them to come to us because we're a welcoming place that adopts out to everyone and treats them with respect. So that's really what it's all about. Anybody else want to talk about single cat adoptions?
Hey, this is Andrea. I was just going to mention like multiple times we've had adopters who have adopted a single kitten, and then, they come back in a month or two or 6 months or a year, and they're like, oh, you're so right. We totally are ready for that second kitten now. Or they send me an email and they're like, oh, we went back to cat. We got another kitten. So like it can happen where, they're just not ready for that double kitten yet. But it does happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but occasionally it does. And then there's also those adopters that you're like, ooh, you're gonna take that single kitten, but
Is that cutting out on my end, or is that?
Yes.
Yeah, she's cutting out a lot.
Yeah, she's cutting out for me also.
All right, we'll come back to you, Andrea. We can't hear you right now, but I think we got what you were saying, right? And yes, some people will come back to get another kitten if they decide they really need that. And that kitten can become friends with another kitten, not from its litter, just as easily as it can from a kitten from its litter. Kittens are super malleable, like they're adjustable. They jump into almost any situation and have a new best friend. Anything else on single kittens? Okay. Okay, so we kind of already discussed this. I'm going a little bit out of order, but refocusing the conversations with adopters. So helping them become a good home for your foster cat or kitten rather than expecting them to be the best home up front. So honestly, as a meet and greet, just if you're just doing meet and greets, like this isn't really a part of your job to help them become a good home. You're more, the meet and greet is really just for them to get to know the kitten. But if you are like reviewing applications in Add-A-Pets, or if you become an adoption counselor, that is part of your job, is to talk to them about what they know and what they're starting from, and help them get to the point where they can be a great home. Speaking of the meet and greets, though, I want to talk to you guys specifically about what your role is, because I think there is a lot of confusion there. I think people a lot of times use the word screening, like, oh, I'm screening these adopters. And we want to be really clear about what exactly we want you to do during your meet and greet. And so I'm going to kind of go through a few things here. Most of you know that I'm also a foster parent. And the way I like to do my meet and greets is I like to think of myself as like a cat salesperson. like I am selling you this cat. So that's my job here. I'm here to be like, this is the best cat and you want it. So that's kind of like how I approach it. It's not like, who are you? And, you know, like, what's your home like? And is this going to be good enough for this cat? It's more like the other way around. So try to think of it that way. But it's really important to be honest. So for example, I had a foster kitty who was painfully shy. He was most of the time would hide. He'd come out to play. It took him about like 2 or 3 weeks to even like come out of his hiding spot. He didn't really like to be pet, but he would tolerate it in certain situations. So he was a tough sell, right? Like not a lot of people are looking for a kitty like that, but he loved other cats. So he was really like looking for a multi-cat home. So I was perfectly honest with them. I said, look, like this cat, he's adorable and he's sweet and I love him and he loves my cat and they get along great. But he's going to be about 3 weeks before he comes out of hiding, and he may never be the cat that comes out when you have visitors. He's probably always going to be like a 1-person cat or a 2-people cat, and he's going to be a great companion for your other cats. But you know, he may never get on your lap and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I'm also saying like, look at how cute he is, and look at how cute he is when he plays, and he's just the sweetest guy and he deserves a home just like any other kitty. And I think after a period of time, he's really going to become more adjusted and more comfortable and all of that. So that's kind of like the extreme example. Most of you guys are working with just your average kitten or cat who's probably good in most situations. And so there's really not a lot to sell other than like, look at it. It's the cutest thing ever. Like, don't you love it? And maybe something about like how he plays or how he, you know, what he gets along with his siblings, or if you have a dog and whether or not they get along. And, you know, you're just really there talking about how much you love this kitten, and it's less about them than it is about the cat. So sometimes things will come up during the conversation where they'll ask you things. Well, my household is like this, and I'm wondering if this is a good fit. And absolutely talk to them about that kind of stuff. But I would think of it as more just like you're selling them a cat. That's kind of how I like to go about it. Does that make sense? Does anyone else have a different approach that they like to use or a way they like to think about it?
So, hi, it's Amy. So, I mean, I agree with the way you approach it. I have a question, since I have Marty with me right now, how would you approach someone who's interested in him when he's kind of in process with the behavior modification? I mean, because I could say, okay, well, this is where he started, this is where he is now, and we're hoping this is his end point. Do you have any guidance on how you would approach that with people?
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Amy. Just so you guys know, this is an adult cat we're talking about, Marty, and he's the socialization kitty. Oh, there he is. He has been in foster for a few weeks, I think, and Amy's still working on a few things with him. So I think he hid for a while and maybe didn't want to be touched, and now we're getting around to working on coming out and playing and being touched. But of course, he's not become like a totally normal cat, right? Like he's still working on some things. And honestly, he's probably gonna be working on some things for a while, especially when he moves to a new home. So the way I approach that is always that tell them the timeline. So when I first got him, he was like this. And then week 1, we got him to do this and talk about my techniques that I used and how he has a little safe place that he likes to hide. And I let him hide in there until he's ready to come out. And then we can't predict what the end result is going to be, but they need to be okay with where you're at now. So they need to be okay if he doesn't progress any further than that stage. So you're talking to them and they're expecting him to make a huge leap into like being a lap cat and being cool with strangers, like, you know, I'd be honest with them and just say, you know, this is what I know about him, and we hope that he'll become more comfortable, and most cats do, but that they should be prepared that he's gonna be shy for most of his life potentially, you know, and that they're gonna have to keep working with him.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, he actually had someone that was interested in him last weekend, and I talked to her, and we kind of mutually decided it probably wasn't the best place because they had no safe room to acclimate him in. She was going to just let him have free access to an unfinished basement. So I kind of so if he gets behind the furnace, what's your plan? So yeah, I think she once she knew, yeah, we went through the timeline, and I think then she herself kind of came to the realization that yes, she was looking for a tuxedo cat, but he wasn't the right tuxedo for her.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great example of guiding somebody like to the answer that maybe you're thinking, but you're not sure if they're thinking it. It's less of a like, hey, this cat isn't good for you and you shouldn't adopt it. And it's more of a like, oh, okay, like we're, you know, this is kind of what he needs. Do you think you have something like that, or how's that going to work for you? And talking him through it can really help them come to a conclusion themselves, right?
Yeah.
Great example. Any other thoughts on that?
Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an example today when I was feeding. A couple came in and looked at one of the kittens in the playhouse, a little bit older kitten, I think probably around 12 weeks. And oh, the kitten was just all over them and they were all over it. And I don't remember the kitten's name, but it looked like a perfect fit. And they asked, you know, we have a dog, and how do you think this kitten's going to get along with the dog? And I said, well, has the dog ever been around kittens before? Well, he's been around rabbits and he's been around chickens and he's been around, you know, this and that, but not a cat. And he's been fine with them. I said, well, you know, he'll probably be fine with a kitten then, and a kitten that young probably be fine with the dog. So, you know, it's just a matter of matching up what the dog has already known. And kittens are really adaptable.
Yeah, that's a great example. I like that. Because we often don't know, right? Like your doctor might say, oh, I have a dog. How is your cat around dogs? Well, we might not know, right? And the best we can do is ask them about their dog and how does your dog do around other small animals, and then their adoption counselor should really be talking them through that whole intro process, because it's a very slow step-by-step process to make sure that they get along, and you can't just throw them together. That's not going to work. They're not like dogs. Dogs you can pretty much just throw together and it'll probably be fine. But with cats, it's a slow process, and that gets me to the next point of that it doesn't always work out, right? And a return is not a failure. I don't want you guys to think if your kittens ever get returned that it was like something's wrong or is a bad match or that poor kitten. Like, don't think about that way at all. A return just gives us more information about what that cat or kitten likes and dislikes, you know? So we're going to get more information about how they did in that household, why it didn't work, and what that kitten needs for its future home. We don't want a cat or kitten to stay in a situation that's not good for the person or for the cat, right? We'll find them a better spot, you know? So try to think about it that way too. It's not, you know, a return isn't the worst thing in the world. Lucinda.
I have a question, just curious. When a cat or kitten does get returned, does the foster get notified? I mean, are you a part of that at all, or?
If I know about it, yes. Sometimes it happens sort of through the adoption side of things, and I don't see it or hear about it, and then the kitten's already adopted again through the shelter before I even know. But I do try to keep you guys informed, yeah, if your kitten either gets returned or ends up in the hospital or stuff like that. But it can be hard to keep track of all that when we have like hundreds of animals.
Yeah.
But we do try, yes. last thing I wanted to talk about before I let you guys go here. Restrictions on adoption. So I get this question a lot about the big one we always get is, can we bond the kittens? And we already talked about that we don't bond kittens. We only bond cats that are a year or older. And that's because, well, the only time we bond those cats is if they come in together. Say they were surrendered from a home where they've been living together since they were kittens, and they love each other and they kind of depend on each other for emotional support. We will bond those kitties and say that they need to go to a home together. And that's mostly because adult cats are, not as flexible as kittens, right? They're a little bit more set in their ways. They know what they like. They have, they're a little bit harder to adjust to new situations, and we want to make that transition as easy as possible. So that's why we'll bond adults and not kittens. And with socialization kittens, I know a lot of folks wonder about that, because especially with socialization kittens, they really bond with their siblings because they're avoiding people, right? Like they don't want to, they'd rather be with their cat friends because they're scared of people. So it's actually better for them to be on their own. We like to work with them one-on-one, and we like to place them in homes where they have a confident adult friend rather than their sibling who's also a socialization kitten. It will help them grow and progress better in those situations if they get split up. Another reason we might put a restriction, honestly, most of these restrictions are for adult cats. We don't put a lot of restrictions on kittens. So those of you who foster adult cats, you might see that we have like a no dogs or a no cats. And that's because we found out somewhere along the process, like that they do not do well with other cats, or they really hated living with a dog, and we're not going to put them through that again. Clearly, like that makes sense, right? So we'll put that in the bio. So we don't want people applying who have a dog, because why are we wasting their time, right? So it'll be like, I prefer a home without dogs, or I need to be your only kitty, something like that. Generally kittens that doesn't apply to, but if you know something like that, let us know. If you've got a dog and your kitten is just terribly afraid of it, probably an older kitten, I would guess, let us know. We can definitely talk about that. And then the last one would be like our very fearful adult cats, or maybe teens, whether or not we place them with in a busy household or with small children. So this one we do see a lot. So we get a lot of like extremely fearful, unsocialized kitties. And if they're in your foster home and you're seeing you have children and they avoid your kids, they don't like them, they don't, they won't come out for them, they seem to be afraid of them, like absolutely, like we can talk about putting in some information of would, prefer a home with older children, or would prefer a quiet household. Like that's not a problem. And we can definitely do that. With the socialization kittens, we actually prefer to put them in households where it's a little bit busier so that they can learn and progress even more. So with kids running around, they can learn to be a part of that busy environment. And we see that they actually do better in those situations than if they're with a single person where they can continue to hide and be fearful for the rest of their life. So you guys are our information source there. So if you have a foster kitty and you feel like there's something that they would really like or dislike, run it by us. So we're happy to try to make the best fit possible without placing too many restrictions, if that makes sense. Any thoughts on that?
I was going to say, I've done that, I think, with one, or actually two. One was very shy, and then another one I felt like would be better as a single cat. Maybe if there's like another laid back cat, and I didn't get any pushback on that, and then she ended up going to like be perfect. I mean, if I couldn't have picked better for myself, like for where she ended up. And but I, having her here and seeing how she interacted with my other cat and stuff, I did that, and I didn't get any pushback from anyone about it. She was an adult too.
And remember, if you do a meet and greet and you feel like this person's just not a good fit, your job as the foster parent is to let the remote adoption counselor know. So you did your meet and greet, you're supposed to return the email to the RAC letting them know that it happened. If you're like, hey, this person really needs to be talked about, you know, like about indoor only, or it seems like maybe they were going to do indoor outdoor, like, can you chat with them about this? Or my kitten or cat is really shy and I'm not sure it's the best fit. Like, let them know, and they can have that conversation for you. Or if you are a trained adoption counselor, like that's the kind of conversation you can have when you're there. But that RAC is there to help you with that part of things and make sure that if that person isn't quite ready or doesn't seem quite like the right fit, we either get them there or find them the kitty that is.
Or let the adoption counselors know that you just don't think this person is actually listening to what you're saying. Like they're so starstruck by the kitten that they're looking at that they're not really hearing about the kitten and what the needs are or requirements may be. So if you let the adoption counselor know that you don't think you've been heard and tell them why, like what subjects you don't think they've been heard on, they're great at approaching that, going through the adoption process with the adopters.
All right. We all remember that goodbye is the goal, right? Like Kitten Lady says. We want to get these kitties into good homes, and most homes are going to be good homes, and we can get them there. And we want a diverse set of adopters. We want all of our communities all people in our community coming to us to adopt and returning to us later to get another kitty, right? Does anybody else have anything they wanted to bring up or comment on?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
What would you do in the situation of an 83-year-old woman and her husband, who's a little bit younger, who want to adopt 2 kittens or young cats, and they're also going to get a dog? And I mean, she's in her 80s. How
Yeah.
do you how do
Here's
you
where
handle
that like ageist thing comes in, right? We can't be ageist, right? We can't be like, you're too old to have a kitten.
Right,
What
you
we
can't-
can do is talk to them about their plan, right? Like, hey, do you have a plan? Like for these kittens are gonna live 20 plus years. Your dog will probably live 10 to 15 years. Like, what's your plan? You know, and most people do have a plan. I mean, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, they know they're not living past 100, probably. Like, they've had to have thought about this. Maybe they have family members that are going to take them. Maybe they're going to get them into the Living Legacy program at CAT. You know, maybe they're going to write it into their will somehow. And it is appropriate, but it's appropriate for the adoption counselor to talk to them about that. I wouldn't say that should be a part of like your meet and greet. And I wouldn't, unless you're a trained adoption counselor, I wouldn't be worried about broaching those conversations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm asking because my sister's in Tucson is in that situation. She wants to adopt, and they do not have a Living Legacy program issue, and she's kind of a flighty sort of person, you know. So I was just wondering how the cat adoption team counselor would handle that kind of situation, because if it were me, I would try to talk her out of adopting more than one new pet. And because they are not of means, and they have to look at the vet bills that may happen in the future. You know, it's just kind of a quagmire sort of thing. And I don't know how Kat would handle it.
Yeah, it sounds like you know more about this situation than your average. We would know about our average adopter, right? Like we're not going to ask them about their income, or we're just going to talk to them about what the kittens or cat's needs are. You know, this cat could live 20 years and you know, they have vet bills and whatnot, and we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and let them as an adult come up with their plan. And if they need help or they want us to, you know, provide any information or talk about what options are, like we can jump in there, but it's not really our place to say like, to demand what their, you know, to them tell us what their plan is or where this kitten's gonna go when they die. You know, like we gotta give people a little bit of credit to like that they can figure some of that stuff out and help them get there, you know. And some cats will end up at the shelter at, you know, at the end of somebody's life because no family member can take them in. And well, let's be honest, that's how a lot of cats end up with us and they find homes. So not the greatest situation, not the end of the world either. Like we'll get them into another spot. Anybody have anything else they want to chat about? You have to wait the appropriate amount of minutes, I think. Lucinda, jumping in.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a question really, but just kind of on the other end of the spectrum, something I've noticed in myself is if I have someone who's like 20 years old and they apply, or someone who's like, oh, I'm about to go off to college, but I'll just take a kitten with me to the dorm, and that to me, I get very like, I don't think you understand. you know, like, so it is hard sometimes to not jump in there with like, ooh, can a 19-year-old really take care of a kitten? And yeah.
I totally get that. I really do. I used to work at a shelter where we were in a college town, and that was like one of the application questions is, are you a college student? Are you living in the dorms? Because you can't have an animal. You know, it was like that. And in today's day and age, that's very different, right? Like you could be attending college remotely. You could be living at home. You could be living in the dorms that allow like a companion animal or a emotional support animal. And again, it's just a question of like, what's your plan? Like, you know, oh, great, you're living in dorms. That's awesome. They really allow pets there. That's really great. Like when I lived in the dorms, they didn't. So I'm really happy that they do. And, you know, like just talking about that kind of stuff in a non-judgmental way, just having that conversation about, you know, oh, cool, you're going to be going to school. What are you studying? You know, is the kitten gonna live with you? That's great. Like, or you have somewhere to go when you're going on vacation, or, you know, are they gonna be able to live with your parents? You know, if it doesn't work out at school, or if you get really busy, like that kind of stuff, like just talk to them. And again, if that's not comfortable for you, or if you're maybe a little bit less of an outgoing person, that's something you hear that information and you give that back to the adoption counselor. So you go back to the RAC and say, hey, while we were talking, they said that they were going to be in the dorms. I didn't feel comfortable about broaching the conversation, but you might want to chat with them about that and whether or not that's gonna work out long term. But I had college friends who had dogs like all through college. Like, they had dogs and cats, and they took great care of them. And it's just, you know, if they know what they're getting into, like, it can work. Anybody else have anything? Okay, well, this conversation definitely isn't over. So if you guys think of anything or think something we didn't cover and you want to reach out to me, that's great. I would love to hear from you. This is an ongoing thing. I think, you know, we'll probably be sending out this recording or maybe updating it every year just to make sure everyone's on the same page. You know, we're one of few foster programs that allow our fosters to do the majority of the adoption process if they want. So, you know, it's kind of like a privilege that you get to do all that. And with privilege comes, you know, responsibility, right? so that's why we talk about this stuff. We want you to all be on the same page as us, and you're representing us out there and you're doing a great job, and we want everyone to keep learning and keep doing well. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and for all your comments and all your questions. I really appreciate it. All right, good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for all your advice and comments. It was really very good. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.